When I was younger, I went fishing twice, and the fishing that I did was catch and release. And I remember that you didn't have to do catch and release. I remember being around this lake, and I'd caught a couple of rainbow trout and put them back in, feeling not too phased by it. But then I saw this other person who caught this rainbow trout, and he just started bludgeoning them so close to me. And I think it was the first time I'd seen real violence towards animals, like, in person, only 6 or 7 feet away. And it was shocking. I remember being really disturbed by it. And it was so interesting because my family, even though we were catching the fish, we'd put them back. But then once we'd finished fishing, we'd go into the shop and we'd buy already killed rainbow trout. And we would buy them so that we had to gut them. And so we did everything but the killing. And I just found that to reflect on that is so interesting, that we would catch them and then we'd buy them whole and have to gut them, but we wouldn't do the actual bludgeoning ourselves. And I guess it speaks volumes about our dislike of the killing, which of course is the reality if we want to eat them.
Yeah, you mentioned the violence. I mean, there's the physical violence, and I would add the emotional, psychological violence done to a child who may be very empathic, and that can be traumatic. It really gets to us to see animals treated violently and to suffer.
As humans, we place ourselves on a pedestal and think we're so intelligent, yet we lack the intelligence to recognize someone else's suffering unless they embody something that we see within ourselves. And it's so destructive, and I suppose it's so unintelligent and so emotionally immature that we can't see fish in the same way that we see the suffering of other animals. And even with other animals, of course, we don't do much to protect them either, unfortunately. So how do we then encourage people, I suppose, to recognize the sentience in fish? How do we grant fishes the moral consideration that they deserve?
Yeah, my approach is first and foremost science. I'm a scientist, so I try and marshal what the science shows. It's less refutable if it's science. And then beyond that, even though, as you say, and quite correctly, they're vastly different from us, there's also huge parallels. They've been subject to the same forces of evolution that we have over huge lengths of time, a lot longer for them, actually. And and their structure, their makeup, they have, an endocrine system, they have a reproductive system, digestive system, circulatory, skeletal, skin system, etc. And then you can look at their social behavior, how they interact with each other, very revealing. So we find if you take all those studies together, we find remarkable parallels between us. I mean, one parallel that I just loved learning about, it was one of those moments where I'm so glad I'm writing this book because this is so neat. This is such cool science that I get to write about it and share it with people. And that is that fishes of a number of species that have been tested fall for the same optical illusions that we do. So if you present them, for instance, with the Ebbinghaus illusion, it's two red dots. The color doesn't matter so much, and then they're surrounded by different sized dots. The two red dots are the same size, but if the surrounding circles are much larger than the red dot, it makes the red dot look smaller compared to one that's surrounded by smaller dots. And it's a very, very powerful visual illusion. And fishes that are trained to poke their nose against the larger of two dots, if they're presented with this Ebbinghaus illusion, they will swim up to the one that looks bigger. It's not bigger, but it looks bigger, and they will poke their nose against that. How very human of them, it shows that they have beliefs and that those beliefs can be fallible. And I think that's a nice example of how fishes can see the world as we do, that they can be fooled. They have an impression of something, and sometimes the impression is wrong. And that's not really mind-blowing in the sense of the fact that animals and evolution ensures that animals deceive each other all the time. We humans are very good at being deceitful, but also other animals send what scientists call honest signals and dishonest signals that confuse or misinform somebody else. It could be camouflage, for instance, which allows a predator perhaps to get much closer to the prey. So, that's maybe a little more than needs to be said about that. But I think that serves as a good example of how the mental world of a fish can be quite similar to the mental world of us, in the sense that they will be taken in by the same optical illusion. And the Ebbinghaus is just one of several that they've been